Welcome to Thursday Live, everybody. Thank you so much for connecting with me and connecting with each other. So glad that you've decided to join us. And if it's your first time, if you're checking Thursday Live out for the first time, welcome. And I'm excited that you tried this, and I hope that God marks your life a little bit because of it. And if you're a regular, thank you so much. And don't forget, whatever medium you're using to join us, if you're on YouTube or if you're on Facebook Live, make sure you comment. It makes it far more enjoyable and far more engaging. You can connect with what I'm talking about, and I try and every once in a while come over here and see what's going on. And for sure, after the podcast is done, I go back and read every comment so that I can see what was going on. And sometimes God then leads me to, answer something that was asked or whatever down the line. So I hope that you'll comment, and I really, really, really do appreciate you joining me. And if this is your first time or you haven't connected in a while, a couple of weeks ago, I decided that I was going to do something unique for Thursday Live. I've never done it before. I decided I was going to, unless God interrupted it with something compelling, do a series of conversations on prayer. And all of Thursday Live is really just a discussion out of the things I'm grappling with and dealing with, difficulties I'm facing, or even victories I'm experiencing, and then feeling like if it's happening to me, if I'm dealing with it, it's probably relevant to you. And prayer's been one of those things for me lately. And so I decided to do a series on it. So if you're struggling with beginning to pray, knowing how to pray, getting out of old habits of just saying repetitive prayers, or you're really trying to go deeper with it, or man, you're just trying to get motivated to do it all, that's what my Thursday Lives have been about. And I encourage you, if this is the first one that you're hearing, you can go back, whatever platform you're on, you can go back and see each Thursday Live we've done. And so if you go back you'll be at the start of this thing. But each one kind of stands on its own a little bit as well. And just find prayer's one of the single most difficult things for God's people to faithfully engage in. Not when there's some hyper crisis going on. That's naturally, help me, God, right? I mean, we're drowning, help me, God. But I'm talking about this ongoing prayer life that doesn't get dry, stagnant, dull, where we're boring ourselves, let alone not connecting to God. And so that's where we are. And just if you are experiencing that, number one, you're human. Number two, you're not alone. And number three, it has always been difficult for God's people to really grasp and then grasp onto prayer in a successful way. Back in Jesus' day, I mean, they had these repetitive prayers and they had these methods of prayer, but they struggled with it. And then comes along Jesus, right? And his prayer isn't some thing that he learned in, rabbinical school. It's not something he learned in the synagogue. It's not something he learned at his mother's knee. Now I lay my, head to sleep, that kind of thing. It's not that. His disciples are watching him, and he's like talking to the Father. He's engaging the Father. He's having this vital and vibrant conversation with God, dynamic, when he's miserable, when he's hurting, when he's in pain, when he's in joy, when he's about to take an experience. God is a part of his life conversationally. And so his disciples come to him and go, wow, and you can read about this in Matthew 6 and really all the Gospels, the synoptics especially. But in Matthew 6, they come and they say, teach us to pray. Teach us to pray. And it was because no one had ever prayed like him that they'd seen. They certainly didn't pray like him. And so he said, okay, when you pray, pray this way. And he gave us the Lord's Prayer. So this was the one who connected with God in prayer, in conversation, in the most vital, dynamic, and powerful way who's ever walked on the planet, being asked by the people that are walking with him and seeing his prayer life, the power of it, the reality of God's presence in it, his passion for it. I mean, he'd get up early in the morning to climb a mountain to pray. And so this is what he said to those who were asking how to pray like that, how to pray like him. And he gave the Lord's Prayer. And this isn't a prayer that he gave us that we should be, at maximum at least, praying over and over and over again. Because in the Gospels, Jesus makes it very clear. In fact, shortly before he teaches us how to pray, he said, don't just pray repetitiously. Don't do vain repetitions over and over and over again that become mindless, you know. That's not connecting with God. That's what religion's always done, but that's not what Jesus did. That's not what they wanted to learn. And so the Lord's Prayer was not him giving us a repetitious prayer to pray over and over again. And that doesn't mean I don't pray the prayer. I mean, some mornings after I've connected with God biblically, I'll just, you know, Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name, and you know, engage that. But I won't do it as just a rote thing. At least I'll try not to do it as a rote thing. I'll do it as each one of the phrases means something deeply to me, and I'm trying to connect with that. Because what Jesus was really doing when he taught us to pray and gave us the Lord's Prayer was giving us an outline for prayer. So now I've already laid out introduction stuff for prayer, motivations for prayer, and now I'm going to get right into the Lord's Prayer, the outline itself. And so I'll try and break it down over the course of the next several weeks in a way that maybe would be helpful for you. And just so you know, I'm not going to wear you thin. This isn't like a seminary classroom or anything. This is meant to be practical, relevant, personal, powerful. And I need you to know I'm not teaching you how to pray in a way that I haven't. I'm just walking through my own personal prayer journal, things that I've learned and things that I pray over the course of a long period of time that's very personal to me, that helps me to pray more effectively when I'm engaging prayer as I should. And I hope it helps you, and it's practical and relevant and personal to you. So he starts with Our Father in heaven, and it sounds simple enough, right? In fact, each of these, Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. You know, forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation. Deliver us from evil or from the evil one. For yours is the kingdom, power, and glory forever and ever. Amen. You know, and it's like, it wasn't meant to be just thrown in there. There you go, God. Covered it. Take care of it. Because prayer is meant to be engaging God, a relationship with God. That's what Jesus made possible through redemption. So when he says, Our Father in heaven, seems simple, you know, 4 simple words. But man, it's packed. And so as I pray, I'm trying to pray as Jesus taught us to pray, as Jesus prayed in a personal way. And these are the things in my prayer journal that I've crafted as a part of my prayer life over the years that help me. Maybe they'll help you. The first thing I find, Our Father in heaven, why did he start there? He's teaching us how to pray like him. This is how he prayed. Why did he start there? Our Father in heaven. And as I've contemplated this a lot, as I've spent time with God in prayer over this, as I've really worked through this, I've realized quite a few things. Not sure I'll get through them all tonight. We might stay on Our Father in heaven 2 weeks, I don't know, and then move on to the others. But here's the first thing I've come to realize. Why did Jesus start prayer, teach us to pray at the beginning, Our Father in heaven? Because it's a declaration of faith, which is what Christianity is to be, what following Jesus is to be, what prayer is based upon. Our Father in heaven, that is a declaration, an imperative declaration of faith. That's fact. Our Father in heaven. Boom. It's a declaration of faith. And think about all the parts of faith it's declaring. Jesus is saying, if you're going to come to God and really connect to him like I do, you have to have the faith I do. You have to believe that he's really there like I do. So start here. You're our Father in heaven. It's a declaration of faith. Think about this. You are our Father. Our Father. The inferred is you are our Father. Because of redemption in Jesus, I get to connect with you as my Father. You care about me. I'm your child. You loved me enough to send Jesus to die for me to make this possible. You know, it's like 1 John 4 says, behold what manner of love God has bestowed upon us that we might be called the children of God. This is the great essence of where gratitude should come from. I mean, and it's a declaration of faith. God, I'm not hoping you'll be my Father. I am not thinking, are you out there somewhere in the universe? If you are, come to my aid right now. That's not how Jesus prayed. That's how religious people have prayed for years, but this isn't how Jesus prayed. He said, you're my Father. I need you. Abba, Father, Daddy, Daddy. It's a declaration of faith to go further. It's you are not just Father, you are my Father. What a declaration of faith. You're not just God. You're not just real. You're not just the one that created. You're personal. You're my Father. I have a personal relationship with you. And this is how prayer becomes dynamic. This is why Jesus started us here, along with many other things, as you'll see. Another thing that I have written in my prayer journal that I spend a little bit of time on, and I'll reconnect to it at the end of our discussion on our Father in heaven. But he says, it's a declaration of faith. You really do exist. And not only that, you are personal to me. You are my Father. It's meaningful. And our Father in heaven. You are in heaven. It's a declaration. You're in heaven. You're overall sovereign. You're over everything. But it goes deeper than that, for me at least. One of the things that we struggle with the most as human beings, is there really life after death? And I know Jesus solved that at the resurrection. I'm not debating that. But really, most of us don't really live like when we die, we're stepping into a place far more important. Most of us don't lay up most of our treasures in heaven where moth and rust don't corrupt and thieves can't break through and steal. Where do we lay it? Here. Why? Because it's the one thing we're sure of right now. We've got it. But Jesus starts us off praying. If we're going to pray like him, our Father in heaven, you are in heaven. Heaven is real. This life is not all there is. And this is the basis, the starting point for great prayer. Faith, to know that this life is not all there is. God is in heaven and he's my Father and I have this privilege to engage him. This is prayer that becomes dynamic. So Jesus starts out for that reason, but then it goes further. Jesus teaches us to start with God. And again, I'm just drawing this from my own prayer journal. Jesus teaches us to start with God in our prayer. Most human beings, me included, if left to ourselves, we kind of start with ourselves. I need this, I need that. This is going on. Have you seen this? And it's more me-centric or people-centric or this life-centric or our faith-centric instead of God-centric. And Jesus said, no, if you're going to pray effectively, it has to be God-centric. You have to start with God. And the reason is simple. It's because it's the only place to start if we're going to know life as God created us to experience it. It starts with God. And that's the problem with most people in this world. That's why we have a hard time praying. We like to start with what's right in front of us. We like to start with what we can see. We like to start with this need that's haunting us. We like to start with what's going to give us financial security, all this other stuff. Jesus says, no, you start with God. And here's what I need to remember as I pray. All of life starts with and ends with God. And the problem with how we live our lives is that we don't start with God or end with God. And so this is how Jesus is teaching us to experience the power of prayer by remembering it starts with God, it ends with God. Matthew 6, Jesus was talking to his disciples and saying, people are seeking everything but God. But these are things that only God can provide in the end. So then that great verse, Matthew 6:33, seek first God and his kingdom and his righteousness and his ways, and all this other stuff will be added to you. You're supposed to start with God, our Father in heaven. That's what we do. When our life doesn't start with God, we fail. We miss all we've been created for. And so this is how we should pray. And that's where I start. Now, just before I give you a second idea on this, and I have quite a few for this one, I'm going to come over and see what you guys are saying over here. And by the way, hi to all of you. Thank you so much for commenting. It's awesome. Linda said I'm going to read the last one I'm getting. And just so you know, some of you won't see these comments because I might be reading on YouTube and you're on Facebook Live and I'm getting them all. But Linda said, he's the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. There you go. And that's how our life should be, starting with God, ending with God. Keta says, I start thanking our Father. That's right. Lori says, I start praying with the Lord's Prayer always. That's cool. That's where I start too. My whole prayer life is based on that. Sandra was talking about a praise that she got. Ronald said, our Father always lets me know I'm never alone. That's right. And so you guys are engaging this. And Lola said, it's just an outline, especially recognizing who he is first. And then we go from there. That's exactly right. And he kind of sets the paradigms with each of these sections of the Lord's Prayer for us. So I've already said it's declaration of faith, and all of that. Now, our Father in heaven, there's so much more complexity to it, so much more depth to it. And I'm hoping that these conversations I'm having with you will help you to maybe engage in more personal prayer life with God, just like when Jesus taught it to his disciples, and just like it's happened to me through the years, even though I still struggle with prayer a lot. Just committing myself to it, spending the time, taking my eyes off of all that I need to do to spend time with him. But I'm also hoping that our time here shows you, whoa, just because it's a small phrase that Jesus gives us doesn't mean it's small truth. I mean, it's complex. By teaching us to pray our Father in heaven, I believe very clearly what Jesus is doing, because remember, it's the beginning of prayer. It's our beginning of connecting with him and focusing. Jesus is helping to define reality for us. Because, and this might be odd to you, but shouldn't be if you're a follower of Jesus. If you're not, man, stay connected with us because you need to become a follower of Jesus. It's where life begins. But the truth is, reality is more often by our human nature defined by what we see, by what we feel, by what we know, by what we need. And that's our reality, by culture and the picture it paints, by the media sources that we keep inputting into our lives, by the academic institutions that we've attended. And that's where our reality comes from. And that's why so many people get messed up in this world, because their reality is formed from a temporary, secular, timelined, right here and now point of view, this linear thing that's happened with humans on earth, and it misses the entire dimension of God's reality. And what Jesus is doing, if you're going to pray effectively like me, more than a little repetitious formula, to God, then you need to know that your reality needs to be defined by him, our Father in heaven. As our human parents and human families define reality for us humanly, I mean, I can't see myself apart from my dad, my mom, my 3 brothers, and the experiences we had as a family growing up. Talk about formative, talk about foundational. They define reality for me humanly. That's where I come from, who I am. Well, spiritually, we need to let God as our Father define reality for us. That's why Jesus starts here, our Father in heaven. He has to define our reality. He has to define how we see our day, how we see our crises, how we see our experiences, how we see our difficulties and our joys. He has to define it. And it's a declaration in the end, our Father in heaven, of my position. I'm his son. It's about humility and submission to him as a son. The son doesn't tell the father what to do. The father tells the son what to do. The son's not to get belligerent with the father, And so, in fact, from the Roman view, and if you're really going to understand Scripture, you kind of have to understand the context in which it was written, and then what the author was writing to engage, so you know kind of what the people would have understood in the day. Well, the Roman view of the authority of the Father was absolute. I mean, absolute. And by the way, the Jewish view was pretty much the same way. And so when you're saying our Father in heaven says, you have absolute right over me, God. You have absolute authority over me. I'm coming to you, not in arrogance, telling you what you should do for me. I'm coming to you in submission and humility, acknowledging that you're the Father, and I need to do what you want me to do. And that's where Jesus was when he walked on this planet, which is why his prayer life was so powerful. It's a declaration, our Father in heaven, of what's our most important relationship. It's with him. Of our priority, it's him. And so Jesus kind of sets the whole thing up that way. And I'll give you one more thought from this one, and then I'll save the rest for next week. But he says, our Father in heaven, our Father in heaven. In so doing what Jesus is doing, and by the way, this could be a series of messages. Our Father in heaven. Jesus sets the paradigm in that one 4-word sentence, sets the paradigm of our prayer lives to begin with a reminder of our worldview. And every day we wake up, our worldview gets messed up by everything we see and feel, the emotional connection and where we're at, and we're thinking from a very temporal mindset. But Jesus says, if you're going to pray in power, then you have to engage the reality of God and eternity, our Father in heaven. So he's reminding us right there at the beginning of our prayer life of our worldview. God is in heaven. Life is eternal and must be lived in light of the eternal. So if every day we're going, our Father in heaven, and we're remembering, life is eternal. So today I need to live my life in light of the eternal. This choice that I need to make right now, how will I view it in light of the eternal? What's it look like in light of the eternal? I mean, he's my Father right now. He's watching. What will matter forever? It would change our behavior if we really set our worldview this way. And this is the point of coming to God in prayer, not to just get a bunch of stuff, because that's not the point. What our Father in heaven basically is setting the mindset that there is more to this life than what we see. There's more to this life than what we feel. There's more to this life than what we're experiencing. And we're acknowledging that on the front end of our prayer. Yeah, God, I'm going to bring to you a bunch of burdens and needs and crisis and things I feel and all that different stuff. But in the end, I remember, you're my Father in heaven. This is why Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane said, I don't want to go to the cross. I mean, we need to figure out another way. But then he said, nevertheless, not my will, but your will be done. Why? Because he came to God as his Father in heaven. He didn't come as a belligerent child telling him what to do, telling the Father what to do. And so Jesus gave us this as a prescription for the starting point for prayer, because he wants to keep our focus very, very right. He wants to keep our focus on values that are strong. And since our values are determined by our worldview, since what matters to us in life is determined by our worldview, we need to start there. And you don't agree with that? Let me just tell you something. All these people that are living such crazy lives right now, and all the opinions that are being had about the breakdown of morality in our world and in our culture, it's all there because people do not have an eternal worldview. They do not believe that God is the sovereign Lord of Lords, Father, Creator in heaven that we're responsible to. They're not surrendering to him. They're not submitting to him. They're not yielding to him. They're throwing him out and doing what they want to do. That's where this trashy culture decline is coming from. And so Jesus said, you want to pray in power, then you've got to remember that God is real. Eternity is real. God isn't limited by time and space as we are. He's in heaven. And so that's a huge deal. All right. Well, I think I've gone on enough, and I'll start there again next week with a bunch more things on this. And I hope it's benefiting you. I know I need it. I'm telling you the truth. Going through this and engaging it with you is helping me to fire back up on all my cylinders instead of sputtering through my life. And so I hope it's doing the same for you. I see what you guys are doing over here. The Buck said, thank you, Pastor Brad. Jen said, thank you. I appreciate that, guys. Linda said, knowing this life is a blink in time and that eternity is forever helps keep me on track and brings me great comfort. Right on. And Kata said, things are temporal. Things in heaven are eternal. We have to stay focused on this. And there you go, all the thing. And then Kimberly said, did the start time change for these lives? I don't get alerts anymore. Can someone send me a link, please? Kimberly, the start time didn't change at 7:16. It actually goes live 7:09. The countdown starts at about 7:11, and then we start about 7:16. Sorry you're not getting those notices. You should. What you might want to do is subscribe to a YouTube channel, like to Northridge YouTube channel, and then you should get notices on that. And then during the day, we try and send out social media things as well. So hopefully that helped you. But anyway, so, I hope this is... The whole point of Thursday Live is to break away from all the things that are pulling us apart in this temporal plane that we live in. And I can't think of anything that might be able to help free us from that and lift us higher than thinking about how Jesus taught us to pray. And just maybe this week, the Lord's Prayer, but why don't you focus on this part of the Lord's Prayer and really take a deep dive in Our Father in Heaven and the things that we talked about right here. And remember, you're not just quoting things and you're not doing that. You're personally engaging God in this way. And if you let God help change your worldview from temporal based to eternal based, this life isn't all we have, so we shouldn't just be living for this life. Everything in your world will change. All right? So I really do appreciate the time, guys. I'm going to pray for you. I so appreciate you guys coming. One of my favorite things is closing in prayer and just making sure we're all bathed. And then I'll give you two thoughts and we're on our way. Father in heaven, I thank you for each one who gathered for Thursday Live. Thank you so much for each one. And I do pray, God, that you'd help us to engage prayer, our relationship with you, in a more dynamic and vital and real and life-impacting way. Because we struggle like the disciples did, and we want to pray like Jesus did, and so he taught us. And God, so I just want to, kind of close our time together tonight with what we talked about, with where the Lord Prayer starts. You're our Father in heaven. God, we declare it by faith. Everything we see doesn't declare it. But you are. You exist. Nothing exists apart from you, and you are our Father because of what Jesus did for us. And God, you are in heaven over us, sovereign, in control, able. You are our Father. It's personal, it's real. And so, God, we declare that with the faith that you give us by your Spirit. And we submit to you and surrender you as children to our Father, and we remember that life is eternal. And we just ask you to help us to make choices that are in keeping with eternity. We want to please you like Jesus did. We want to pray like Jesus did. And we'll thank you for it. Give us grace. I know someone's hurting here today, God. I'm sure they are. I pray that you just pour your grace of healing into their life, your grace of contentment, peace, security into their life. And I'll thank you for that as well. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, everybody, I'm so glad that you joined me for Thursday Live. Again, if this was your first one, don't let it be your last. Every Thursday we try to have a Thursday Live unless there's technology stuff or something's going on, and it starts at 7:16. So I hope to see you next week at Thursday Live. And don't forget, this weekend at Northridge Church, I am bringing to an end the proverbial New Year series, this series out of Proverbs, and I'm going to be having a conversation on live free, right out of the Proverbs, so I'm excited about it. Don't miss the end, and hope that you'll be for that. And I'll be here for that, whether it's at Plymouth or in Brighton, or if you're not a part of our community, online somewhere. So thanks for joining me. I appreciate it. Until next Thursday, have a great week, everybody.